Welcome back. We've been discussing the resources that have been developed here at LaSalle for working with children on the autistic spectrum, and starting with, of course, the marriage and family therapy program, speech and language, working into the Ladders Initiative to bring all these different resources together. And now is our time to touch base with family members. With us today we have Jacqueline Silver, mother of Jermaine, and of course Lou Berman. Lou, or Louie, if we will. And both of them have had some rich experiences over time. Jackie, of course, Jermaine is now how old?
24.
24, that's amazing. And he's been all the way through the system from day one, everything you can name. And of course, Louie is now, how old is Louie now?
12.
He's 12 now, so right in the thick of things. So you've coming from slightly different perspectives, but at the same time being able to share some common ground, I'm sure.
There's a lot of things that have changed and a lot of things have stayed the same. When Jermaine was diagnosed, first of all, a lot of people had never heard of it. I had never heard of it. And when the doctors told me, they said your son has pervasive developmental disorder, I didn't know what they were talking about. And I went out trying to locate books and couldn't find anything. And I work at a university hospital, and I actually went to their library and said to the librarian, I'm looking for something on this disorder, and she comes back and gives me a book on autism. And I almost felt dead. It was like it didn't hit me then until that moment that my son had autism. Something, like you said, was only diagnosed 1 in every 10,000 births. And so getting help for him over the years was a challenge. Because he was sent into other avenues. We often were dealing with agencies that provided services to children who were mentally challenged in other type of ways, had other learning disabilities, and not autism. Finding professionals who understood his problem was slim
What kind
to
of
none.
options were out there for you at that time? And then maybe, Lou, you can take it from what's been happening more recently.
Actually, none. We went through the Center for Autistic Children. That was the only thing there.
Okay.
And then there was an age limit on that. So when Jermaine turned 12, I guess where you're standing right now, there were no services for him. And again, very few people who understood what his needs were. When we had a crisis situation, it was seriously a crisis. Where did we go? Who did we turn to? Who could help me? And there really was no one. And turning to my own family, needless to say, we wore a lot of people out because we just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, families are overwhelmed when they're faced with challenges like that. Now, and it's in fast forward 10 years, or I guess 12 years almost. You going through the same kind of a situation, trying to find help, going through the diagnosis and so on. What was there for you, Lou, with Louie going through all this?
Well, I can tell you that it can get very overwhelming very quickly. And typically, your ability to cope with that type of situation depends a lot upon the type of disorder that the child has, and that my son had. My son was very violent, temperamental mood swings, periods of crisis and then non-crisis. So your ability to kind of cope with that and to get the kind of services you need really are, unfortunately, even up until this point, from what I've seen, dependent upon the severity of the child's condition. Typically, the less severe that the child is, your ability to get services are more plentiful. You may remember there was a time with Louie that he was in crisis, and there were not many options afforded to me, in terms of dealing with that particular scenario in the short term. And then, of course, compounded. What compounds that is your own personal situation, your support staff of your family, and so forth. So in my case, I was a single parent, from a fairly whereas, I didn't have a lot of those type of resources on the home front to assist. So simple things like childcare, being able to go to the store, having a job, typical things that most Americans take for granted. When you deal with this and with a child that you're solely responsible for, those type of things and the ability to do them take on a whole new light.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your experiences in some ways mirror a little bit more of what Jackie has gone through. Just finding the appropriate services, especially, I mean, you said that your son was more severe than a lot of the other kids that might be presenting on the spectrum, especially with the aggression.
Sure.
And services just aren't jumping up and down to take in kids who are aggressive. And you've experienced that, Jackie, and 12 years, after the fact, we're still experiencing it now.
Yeah, well, in her case, and at that time, obviously services have taken or made some progress.
Yeah.
But I would assume that back then, they were, or the services weren't what they are now. And then, of course, in my son's case, kind of mirrors perhaps what you had gone through, is that because of the nature of my son's condition and the severity of it, there still are not nearly enough services for children that are in crisis with those type of symptoms.
I think one of the things that disturbs me the most, I got problems even with the school. Here it is, the teachers weren't able to help. And you put a child in special education and you expect that they're supposed to be able to help in a way other people couldn't. The police, again, major institutions where you think that these people would be able to help, were not. And they're actually people who sometimes put you in more jeopardy. Because they were not able to help. And instead of saying they couldn't help you, they victimized you more. And you end up on your own.
Just the general lack of awareness of the overall general population about what is autism. I mean, even though we've come a long way, to some extent, we haven't really come a long way. I remember there was one evening when you and I, Jackie, were dealing with a crisis, and the police officers walked through the door to handle some aggression that was happening at that point. Saw 300+ pound teenager kind of going off, and turned right back around and walked out the door.
Yes, they did. And 6 police officers came
we got some
to
backup.
my home. Yes, 6 of them to take away, like you said, a gentle giant. And I remember them even asking my child, did he have a weapon? He didn't know what they were talking about.
I had no idea.
And to watch my child be handcuffed and taken out of my home was one of the most difficult moments of my life. And I think if you hadn't have been there, I don't necessarily knew how Jermaine or I would have handled that, because clearly the police weren't able to deal with a teenage kid who was actively acting out, but on a very childlike level. They were not prepared to deal with that.
And I'm sure you've had experiences too, Lou, as far as not having people understanding.
A story clearly comes to mind when I had relocated to Texas for a short time, and my son was absolutely enraged, and he was going through. So we were going through some medicinal changes at the time for which he had a negative reaction toward. And it was not the right medication for him. But my wife at the time and my daughter were in a vehicle with my son, had to pull over on the freeway, get out of the vehicle because he was physically attacking them. Called me from work. I rushed over to the highway, got into the car with him, and was trying to keep him at bay and drive on the highway. Ultimately, at the same time, after calling for police assistance, and it was like, well, why can't you control your 11-year-old child? And I'm like, okay, looks like I'm on my own.
Why don't you spend a few hours?
Yeah, and the police wind up coming anyway, because when my son had decided to attack me while I was driving, I had motorists call the police from the freeway, giving the opposite story, saying that I was attacking my child.
Of course.
Yeah. So then at that point, policeman had pulled me over and asked me what was going on. I was bleeding from my face from scratches from him, and it looked like a very violent, type of physical altercation had taken place. It did. It just I was the victim, and he decided to ask me if I wanted to. Stay there while they, called an ambulance, and I knew what needed to be done. I needed to get home and get him his medication. That would help calm him, and they didn't want to let me leave.
Wow.
So it was a very, very troublesome. That was, just one of the most severe instances. But those are typical things that I am sure all parents of autistic children would have some story like that to share on some level.
Well, I think, and just in the time that we have, you know, these we could be here all day discussing. But what needs to change? What specific things? Maybe you can just grab one or two out of the hat. What specific things would have helped you along the way that maybe could be implemented in the future, whether it's here at LaSalle or the region and so on? What would make a difference?
You know, Lou mentioned medication. And at first I thought medication was going to be a cure-all for my kid. I kept looking for that magic pill. And we've probably tried every medication there is known to man. And I realized we needed a good behavior specialist. We needed people who could redirect and teach me to work with my child at home, and then to take that out to the greater community so that he knew how to respond differently to people, because it was going to be more difficult getting people to respond to him. I would like to see more of that.
So the well-trained behavior specialist.
Absolutely.
How about you, Lou? What's one thing in 10 seconds or less that you could say this is
you know, I just think that a greater awareness needs to be out there with, in addition to just the specialists in the field and folks like yourself and of course you know, we already know, but the general population doesn't know.
Right.
And I think that if that were able to be accomplished, then I think it would raise a little more sensitivity to you know, people that are going through the things that we typically go through.
Raising that awareness. Well, hopefully we've been able to do that today. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you. Thank you for joining us for this hour.